The Apache village had grown quiet in ways that even the wind seemed to notice. Ever since the chief's son, young Taye, had stopped speaking, a heavy shadow had settled over the tribe. He had been only 6 when the fear of losing his father's respect and the terror of witnessing a violent skirmish with settlers had closed his mouth and silenced his words. For 4 long years, Taye had wandered through the village in silence, his eyes wide and watchful, carrying the weight of thoughts and fears he could not express. His small hands became the only means of communication, moving in delicate gestures to convey urgency, curiosity, or sorrow. Yet nothing could replace the sound of his voice, and the elders often feared it might be lost forever. His mother tried everything. She sang softly by the fire, telling gentle stories of Apache heroes and brave ancestors, hoping to stir his spirit. She whispered in his ear, held him close, and coaxed him with sweet melodies and laughter. Yet Taye only nodded faintly or sometimes looked away, lost in a world only he could see. Even his father, the proud and stoic chief, felt helpless as he watched his son drift silently among the horses and the campfires, as though speaking aloud might summon danger or invite sorrow. The villagers whispered that the boy's spirit had retreated into a secret place, a sanctuary where the cruelty of the world could not reach him. But worry gnawed at their hearts. One morning, a stir near the edge of the village caught Taye's attention. The elders had captured a white prisoner, a young man accused of trespassing on sacred Apache land. He was frightened, but his hands held an instrument, a small worn guitar, and his lips trembled as he hummed softly. The prisoner's voice, fragile yet melodic, carried across the dusty ground and into Taye's heart. The boy froze, listening, his silence meeting sound in a way he had not experienced in years. The music was simple yet haunting, a song of longing and memory, a sound that reached parts of Taye's soul he had forgotten existed. For the first time in 4 years, Taye lingered by the square, not with fear, but with an impossible curiosity. The villagers watched silently, sensing a change. The prisoner's song, unintentional yet powerful, had touched something buried deep within the boy. And as the wind carried the notes across the camp, the elders exchanged knowing glances. Perhaps this man, a stranger, a captive, could awaken the boy who had not spoken in years. Something had begun, something fragile and hopeful, like a single ember in the dark desert night. Days passed, and the prisoner remained confined to a small brush pen at the edge of the village, guarded closely by stoic Apache warriors. Despite the restrictions, young Taye found ways to observe him, sitting just beyond the reach of the guards, his small body tense with anticipation, every movement of the prisoner's hands across the worn strings of his instrument, every quiet hum captured Taye's attention. He leaned forward, his eyes following the gentle rise and fall of the notes, his lips slightly parted as if trying to inhale the music directly into his soul. The melodies seemed to speak a language Taye had almost forgotten existed, a language beyond words that resonated in the deepest chambers of his heart. The village began to notice subtle changes in the boy. Though he still did not speak, his posture was different, less withdrawn, more alive. He followed the prisoner's music with an intensity that suggested not merely curiosity, but understanding. Sometimes he would sway slightly, moving in rhythm with the invisible pulse of the song, as if his body remembered what his voice had forgotten. Elders whispered among themselves, recognizing the miracle unfolding. Perhaps the boy's silence had never been total. Perhaps his voice had only been waiting for the right key, a sound that could awaken what lay buried within him. One evening, beneath a sky streaked with the fire orange of sunset, the prisoner sang a song about distant mountains, flowing rivers, and the longing for a place called home. The melody carried on the desert wind, reaching Taye's ears and sinking deep into his chest. For the first time in years, a single tear rolled down his cheek and a small, almost imperceptible sound escaped his lips, a hum, soft and tentative. The villagers gasped in awe, realizing they were witnessing the first spark of speech since the boy's long silence. The melody had cracked the walls around Taye's voice, giving him a small, fragile bridge back to the world he had withdrawn from. The following morning, the prisoner sang again, encouraged by the boy's fascination. This time, Taye repeated the notes, struggling to match the haunting cadence, shaping sounds with his lips, his tongue, and his chest. Each attempt grew stronger, more confident. The villagers watched, silently holding their breath, hearts swelling with hope. They had thought the boy lost to silence forever. But now they saw the impossible becoming reality. His eyes shone with a quiet triumph. And the elders murmured their blessings, understanding that this simple music was not just sound. It was the key that could awaken a soul, teach a voice, and heal a wounded spirit. By the fifth day, Taye's humming had grown into tentative words, barely audible but unmistakable. "Sing again," he said, his voice trembling like fragile reeds in the wind. The prisoner froze, startled, then smiled gently, realizing that the boy who had been silent for 4 long years was speaking at last. The villagers gasped, whispers spreading quickly through the camp, their hearts lifting with awe and wonder. The proud chief, who had carried the weight of worry silently on his shoulders, stepped forward, tears glimmering in his eyes, and embraced his son. The moment was sacred, not only because Taye had spoken, but because his voice had returned through the language of music and connection, not force or fear. From that day onward, Taye's confidence grew rapidly. He began to repeat the prisoner's songs, matching melody and rhythm with surprising precision for a boy who had lived in silence for so long. His lips formed the words carefully, his tone shaky at first but gradually strengthening. The prisoner, once a captive and a stranger, became a teacher and a companion, patiently guiding Taye as he discovered the power of expression. Together, they sang by the fire, their voices weaving in harmony, creating music that resonated across the village, across the plains, and into the hearts of every Apache who listened. The villagers watched in amazement as Taye's laughter and song filled the air, bright and clear, replacing the silence that had hung like a shadow over the camp. Children gathered around, curious and inspired, while elders nodded quietly, sensing the fulfillment of something ancient and sacred. Taye's voice became a living bridge between generations, a reminder that even the deepest silence could be broken with patience, care, and the right spark. The prisoner, too, felt a change within himself, a bond forming with the boy who had found his voice through the resonance of shared music. In time, Taye's singing was no longer just mimicry. It was storytelling. He carried the songs of his people, infused now with new melodies learned from the outsider who had touched his soul. His voice spoke of hope, courage, and resilience, teaching the village that even the most profound fear and sorrow could be transformed. And at sunset, when the sky blazed with reds and golds, 2 voices would rise together over the hills, one of a freed soul, one of a boy who had reclaimed his world, blending into a single harmony that reminded the village of life's beauty, the power of patience, and the magic that could awaken a spirit even after years of silence.